What's up YouTube, this is Tubedigga. In this video I'm going to talk about Midi Cc automation and Midi Nrpn automation. Now Midi Cs are the standard for MIDI control change messages, which most of you would have heard of, I assume. So let's say you wanted to automate the filter cutoff of an external synth. I will show you how to do that. There's been a lot of comments and questions on YouTube and forums and various places that I've read, including messages that I've had to my own channel of how to do this. It's pretty simple, but some people seem to be getting tripped up somewhere along the line. I imagine that is mostly to do with the internal settings of their device, their synthesizer or their drum machine, etc. But I'm going to show you how I do it. My synthesizer is a Novation KS Rack. It's one of my favourite synthesizers just because it's very simple to use, it's multi-timbral and it's very easy to store patches. I might do a video on the KS Rack at some point to give you guys an introduction to it. They still go for ridiculously cheap prices on eBay. I think there's a couple on there at the moment that were going for about 250 UK pounds, which I personally think is an absolute bargain for what you get. It's a fantastic synth, and I'm going to be using that for this video. So I'm going to talk about Midi Cs first, and then towards the end of the video we're going to get into the more complex Nrpns. Now CCs are easy to control with the MPC Live. The first thing that you have to do is make sure that your MIDI cable going to your external device is coming out of the MIDI outputs of the MPC Live or MPC X. So in my case I'm using MIDI out B. So that is going from MIDI out B port to the MIDI in of my KS Rack. The next thing that you need to do is switch your default program, which is a drum program, to a MIDI program. So now we're in MIDI program mode, and at the bottom you'll notice it says MIDI port out A as the default. I'm going to switch mine to B because that's what is controlling my KS Rack. I'm going to control the first MIDI channel, which is just my KS Rack in program mode, and that's on MIDI channel 1. So whatever channel you're on and whatever track you're on, you can change the MIDI channel there to change the different programs on a multi-timbral synth. So say if you had a Waldorf Blofeld, that's 16-part multi-timbral, then you just change the MIDI channels for each of the different tracks, and you can control all the different programs in your Blofeld as an example. But for this video I'm just going to be using the first MIDI channel to control one basic program in the KS Rack. So make sure you've got that set up and make sure it corresponds to the actual MIDI output port that you're using on your MPC Live. The next thing we need to do is press menu and go to program edit. We don't need to do this, I'm just showing you this. Now inside the MIDI program parameters you've got all these different CC messages. It doesn't cover all of them, it covers kind of the standard ones that are used by a lot of manufacturers, but it doesn't cover all of them. Filter cutoff on my KS Rack is CC 105 or 105. And if you take a look at all the different tabs or pages within the MIDI program, I know I'm flicking through them quickly, but take my word for it, Midi Cc 105 or 105 isn't in there. So I'm going to press and hold my Q-Link knob and press Q-Link edit, and you will see my first Q-Link I've set up already to control CC 105. The default is volume, but I've changed the second Q-Link knob to control that. I just want to make sure that that is up full so we can actually hear the sound, because sometimes if volume is one of these parameters and you've tweaked the knob, you'll find that it might have jumped back down to 0. So I just want to make sure that's up full. Okay, there's our sound. And if I move the bottom Q-Link knob that's set to CC 105, and there you go, we can control the filter. Now to record that, we don't use the automation. That is basically for internal control of the MPC Live. So if you had a drum program and you wanted to control the filter cutoff of that, or a key group program, that's what you'd use that for. But when recording MIDI Cs for an external device, you need to record it in the same way as you record notes, and that's into the sequencer. So I'm going to arm my sequencer and I'm going to just press a pad and just record the automation and the note at the same time. And there you go, that's recorded in all perfectly. And if we go to menu, list edit, you can see that our modulation type, let's actually flick that to track automation. There you can see the CC 105 is there. It's also recorded in aftertouch. We don't need to worry about that. But as you can see, all these CC 105 values have been recorded in via the Q-Link knob. Okay, and that's basically how you do it. So if you press and hold Q-Link, go to Q-Link edit, you can set up all your different CCs depending on what your particular synth has got those CC numbers set for whatever parameters you want to control. So let's talk about Nrpns. So Nrpns are non-registered parameter numbers. So they're things that the manufacturer has kind of kept a bit more under the hood, and you need to give the MPC Live a few different bits of information, not just the one control change message, as in the case that I just showed you with CC 105 for the filter cutoff for the KS rack. Or if you look in the manual for your own particular synth, you may have access to certain parameters that are only controllable by Nrpns. So in my case, the Nrpn number for the waveform shape of the oscillator 1 of the KS rack is number 50. Okay, so if you look at these two numbers here, bank MSB and bank LSB, they're the first two values that you have to give the MPC Live. The third value is a data entry number. So that is an actual CC number. If we press and hold the Q-Link again and press Q-Link edit, and as you can see on my third Q-Link up, I've got that set to data entry, and that is CC number 6. So this is a CC number, but you combine that with the bank MSB and bank LSB. So I've tried to use Nrpns with the MPC Live, and it doesn't work if you just tell the MPC Live itself what the different values that you need to tell it when dealing with Nrpns. I'm not going to go into it too much, but basically the only way that I've found to be able to get Nrpns working is with an external controller going into the MIDI in of the MPC Live. So that could be a keyboard or a BeatStep Pro or any other controller that handles Nrpns and CCs and that kind of data. So in my case, I've got a BeatStep Pro. I've set my BeatStep Pro up to send an Nrpn message. It's really easy in the BeatStep Pro. You just tell the BeatStep Pro that you want to send an Nrpn via whichever knob on the front control panel of the BeatStep Pro, and that will send that to the MPC Live. You just need to tell it which Nrpn that you want to control. So in my case, it's Nrpn number 50, and that will control the waveform of oscillator 1. Okay, so if we press and hold Q-Link, go to Q-Link edit, the only thing that we need to set up for a Nrpn in the MPC Live is number 6, is CC number 6, and that's data entry. That basically allows you to control the value of the Nrpn in the same way that you would control the value of CC 105 for the filter cutoff. So what the BeatStep Pro has done is given us those combined Nrpn messages, because we need bank MSB, which is most significant byte, and we need bank LSB, which is least significant byte. And they're shown on the main page here. But I've tried changing those to correspond with the correct message that I should be sending the MPC Live, but it doesn't work for some reason. I'm not too sure. It might be my lack of knowledge with MIDI, but I don't need to deal with these, and I don't recommend that you guys deal with those. I recommend that you have a MIDI controller that can handle Nrpns, because the MPC Live can certainly accept those, as I'll show you in a second. So I've got my BeatStep Pro controlling the waveform shape of oscillator 1. So I'm just going to press a note again, and I'm going to move the first rotary encoder on my BeatStep Pro, and you'll hear the waveform change. Let's just open up the filter so you can hear that as well. So I'll record that in, and then I'll show you that in the list editor. So you can actually record this in, which can be really interesting because you can get some really nice glitchy stuff with Nrpns, because they do control some of the more hidden parameters of MIDI devices. So I'm going to overdub what I've already done in there with the filter cut off, but I'm going to change the wave shape now. Okay, let's go to menu, list edit, and then you can see it's accepted our Nrpn. So this is what I was talking about earlier. It's recorded the Nrpn MSB as 0, and that's correct. We don't need to change the most significant byte value. We don't need to tell the MPC Live that in the main page. So let's go back to the main page. As you can see, it's off. My BeatStep Pro is sending the Nrpn. And this is really handy because then we can see that it's recorded the waveform shape selection in the KS rack. But that's cool because we can see that that's the only number we need to tell the MPC Live. Just a basic summary, the BeatStep Pro is sending MIDI into the MPC Live, and then that MIDI is being sent out to the Novation KS rack. The CC, as I showed you with the filter cutoff, the MPC Live is doing that on its own. The Nrpn is being sent by the BeatStep Pro, but ultimately they're working together to control the Novation KS rack. I could also set up another knob on the BeatStep Pro to control the filter cutoff as well, but you know, I just wanted to have that hands-on on the MPC Live Q-Link knob itself. But the nice thing is once you've sent that message to the MPC Live from an external controller, let's go back to the Q-Link edit, I can now, you know, still use that data entry knob. I don't have to use the BeatStep Pro. So if I press a pad again on the MPC Live, we now don't need to actually use the BeatStep Pro. I just needed it to send those messages to the MPC Live so it now knows that data entry is looking at that particular Nrpn. Okay? So I hope that's given you guys a bit of an idea of how this is done. That is CCs and Nrpns on the MPC Live. Obviously all this information applies to the MPCX. The only real big difference with the MPCX is you've got the additional benefit of having 2 extra MIDI output ports on the MPCX, so you can hook up a load of other gear. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Please like, subscribe, share, all that stuff, and please head over to my Patreon if you fancy chucking me $1 or more a month to help me continue do these videos for you guys. Happy New Year, and I will see you guys in the next one. This is Tubedigga, and I'm out. The rubber dub sound.